What's going on, traders? This is Jack with the Trading Tribe. Welcome back to the channel. Today I did want to go through my most recent swing trade here on the S&P 500 ES mini futures contract, kind of how I was able to swing trade ES this week and what I saw kind of in the trade start to finish. So wanted to start with the TrazeZella recap of the trade. So I was able to take out about $8.2 thousand of profit in a single trade with ES, and wanted to go through really how I found the trade, but also how I was able to add to a winner. So we can see here on the right with the integration to TradingView that I was able to begin in my position here with this initial entry. I was then able to add when the trade began working in my favor, and then add a final contract as we got closer and closer to that target. And then when we did get to the target, I was able to take all three of those contracts off of the table to secure the $8.2 thousand of profit. If we look here on ES, we did fall into a really nice demand zone on our charts. So when we do this right, I like to essentially wait for confirmation of buyers, and then I like to essentially start into the position with targets of the near supply zones. So we'll go through this a little bit more on the ThinkorSwim side, but as you can see, right, I was able to scale out of that trade near those prior overhead supply levels. If we look at the trade, right, the executions for the trade are those three entries that we just talked about. Here are date stamps for those entries, as well as my exit, where I was able to scale out of the full contract size or position size, if you will, for that $8.2 thousand. I was able to secure the profits yesterday, which is October 9th in this scenario, and I was able to grab about 55 points out of the market, but was able to take this with three contracts, and that's how it equated to around 8.2 thousand. If we look here at the running P&L of the trade as well, this also does fall in line with my typical kind of swing trade where those entries are refined enough where we can see we were in very minimal drawdown. I think at the worst point of the trade, I was down about $500, right? So I was able to get in that first position with small size. And as you can see, right, the market took a little while to begin to trend in my direction. And then I was able to add that second and third contract. And after adding, we can see a really clean P&L curve where we essentially just climbed in an uptrend right to that $8,000 of profit, which is exactly what we like to see. And this is definitely a trade on ES that I've been refining through the years. If we go over to the ES chart on ThinkorSwim, I'll also break it down here as to kind of what I was thinking for the trade. So ES has essentially been in a bull run or a bull market for most of 2024. There have been some choppy periods of time, but for the most part, right, if we look at like the daily chart of ES, we have been on a steep uptrend really ever since about January, February, right? We started at about 4,900 on the futures contract, and we're all the way up around 5,800. So we've had a really, really nice bull market where we have had some pretty deep pullbacks, but you'll notice all of these pullbacks have been met with big buyers, and we've been able to reach all-time highs throughout the entire year. So with that bias, essentially, I have dropped down to the hourly time frame here, and we can see a few things that I have noticed and kind of put together for the trade. First of which, I did notice a pretty large demand zone. So right around 57.40 to 57.20, I noticed that every single dip into this zone was met with pretty aggressive buying. Right, so we can see these turns have been extremely nice, right? If you were taking longs out of this zone, right, really nice profit potential into these pretty large pops. And that's really what gave me the idea for the trade. So essentially, when it was able to pull back near the 6th of October, right, and hold this zone, that was when I basically began the interest for the trade. This is the 1 minute of that price action. So we can see we were able to get into this zone and hold. Then we can see that the 1 minute began to trend, and that is what spurred the interest for the trade. So that's essentially when I started in on the position. I, of course, added those other 2 contracts when the trade began to work, but I was able to start in on the position near the demand zone. What I'll typically do is I'll typically look to overhead kind of supply levels for my potential exits. Obviously, that previous all-time high was about 58.30, so that ended up being kind of the target for the trade. As for my exit, that was at 58.22 essentially, so I almost held it essentially to the full target. I held these contracts to about right here, which is almost to kind of that top line target. But essentially, yeah, we had the target of these prior highs for the swing trade. As we got closer and closer to that target, of course, right, we were looking to scale out of the trade every now and then, right? I'll scale out of my contracts one at a time. In this case, right, at enough confidence and confluence to hold all 3 contracts for the entire position. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those down below. Hopefully this really helps. These are these larger swing trades that I typically try to look for in the ES futures market. This is just one example of that. As you can see, I am trading ES again here today. If you have any questions, though, feel free to leave those down below, and we will be back next time. Thanks, everyone.